Just changing things up a little this week, so I'll have Melissa kick us off.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for
Hi,
coming.
Mel.
Hi. So my name's Dr. Melissa Kwak. Melissa Kwak. I'm a family physician. I am also a certified life coach, and that's how I know Bridget. We certified in the same program together. And Bridget has a lot of things after her name. A communications expert and an author and a TEDx speaker, and is employed by big companies or hired by big companies to teach them leadership skills and communication skills. And she was a teacher or professor at a university out there in California.
Wow.
And she is going to start us today in the same way that we've started the past couple weeks. This is our 4th week of going through a self-coaching model that has helped us make sense of the world and make sense of our own life experiences. It's just kind of a tool that we can use to do such. So she's going to go through that. And I'm just going to put my own disclaimer out now. As I am an employed physician, everything I say is my own opinion, and I'm not representing my employer in any sense at all. So I will give it back to you, Bridget.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, you spent all that time introducing me, and you. So I want to introduce you. Melissa, Dr. Kwak is a well-loved family physician and has been in 13 or so years now, many years, right? In her practice, and a certified life coach was one of just one of the most amazing people to get to know in our coaching program. We spent much time together coaching in and out of class, and really she's a phenomenal coach. So also, know that both of us are available after we finish our little talks for coaching if anybody wants to come on for coaching. And Dr. Kwak has also been really doing her due diligence to stay on top of everything that's happening with the virus, and to bring, of course, for her patients and her practice, but as well, even more so, to bring the most updated information to us in these workshops. So I really appreciate that. We were talking just last night, what are the updates? She's like, yeah, I'm going to look into that more, and I'm going to research this more. So I just appreciate and have so much gratitude for you, Dr. Kwak, for doing this for us. For the folks who are here today, and for the folks who will be watching after on video, it's going to be really valuable. So yeah, our little protocol is basically talking briefly about the self-coaching model, which I think everyone on the call already knows about, those of you who are already here. So we're going to do a super brief review of it. And today we're going to apply it to something called the manual, which, if you're not familiar with, it's a really easy concept to understand and can be incredibly helpful in our relationships right now, as many of us are experiencing more time with our loved ones than we've ever have before, or less time with our loved ones and those who we cannot see. So the manual is an incredibly powerful relationship tool. And Dr. Kwak's also going to talk a little bit about confirmation bias, which relates to the manual as well. And then we'll open it up for coaching. And all right, the self-coaching model. Okay. So the self-coaching model comes from the Life Coach School, which was founded by Brooke Castillo, who is our master coach instructor, our master coach, life coach, and who we went through training with, and we learned a lot about this. There are lots and lots of ways to apply it, but the simple introduction to it that can be really helpful in understanding what's going on for you in your mind and with your emotions as we're all navigating this new territory of living in a pandemic, comes down to these 5 parts: the circumstance, a thought, a feeling, an action, and a result. So a circumstance is 100% fact. The coronavirus exists in the world is a fact, right? It is 11:10 a.m. in California right now. This is a fact, okay? Facts trigger our thoughts. What do we think about the fact, right? What thought am I having, whether it's in my subconscious or in my conscious brain or my conscious mind? Then those thoughts trigger our feelings. So typically we're trained in the world to believe that our feelings are caused by outside circumstances in the world, but they're not. And it's so empowering to realize that our feelings are caused by our own thoughts. And in many cases with work, we can choose our thoughts. We can be intentional about our thinking, and therefore the feelings that are being generated, right? So our feelings then lead to our actions. If we're feeling sad, if we're feeling happy, if we're feeling motivated, if we're feeling apathetic, that then drives the action that we take or the action that we don't take in that situation. And then we get a result. We get an outcome from our thought, our feeling, and our action that creates a result or an outcome in our lives. I'm pausing because my dogs are barking really loud, and my husband assured me that he would have the dogs quiet. So this is a perfect example. Let's just go for it and use the self-coaching model, right? So the circumstance, my dogs are barking in the background, that is a fact. Whether you can hear it or not, believe me, it is a fact, right? So I might choose to think, how dare he said he would keep the dogs quiet, and they're still barking, by the way, right? I can't believe it, right? That causes my feeling of being angry and upset, right? It's not the fact that the dogs are barking. It's not the fact that for whatever reason the dogs are not locked up in my husband's office the way he told me they would be. It's my thought that that shouldn't be happening and that's not right and he should have taken care of that, right? That's going to cause me to feel angry. What am I going to do? Maybe I'm going to run out there and yell and scream at him. How dare you? You said you'd keep the dogs in your office, right? That creates the result of a lot of anger and stress and strife in our relationship, which is absolutely not what I want to create in my home at this time when we're all together. Me and my husband and my daughter are together 24/7, right? So let's say I have the same circumstance, the dogs are barking, and I choose to think, oh, probably they got out and he didn't realize, right? Or probably he forgot because he's working on so many things right now and I appreciate everything he's doing and I feel neutral about it and I feel fine about it. I don't have to get upset about it, right? And so the action is maybe just go out there later and say, hey, the dogs happen to be barking. What happened? And then he tells me, oh, I'm so sorry. This is what happened. Result, no problem. Loving, happy home, right? So do you see how it's so often it's our choice what we want to think about what someone else does or doesn't do that leads to our feeling toward that person. Okay, so this is basically the same example I just had for you. And this is real. These are all real, by the way. So here's another C, a circumstance. My husband leaves dishes in the sink. For husband, spouse, wife, partner, child, put in whoever you're with, right? How many of you can relate, right? So think about this. This is just a neutral fact. There are dishes in the sink. This is not something necessarily to generate a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about, right? But let's just say that I go to the place of thinking this. He is so rude and insensitive. How dare he leave dishes in the sink, right? How do I feel? Angry. What's generating my anger? Is the fact that he left dishes in the sink generating my anger? Yes or no? Nod your heads. I can see you. Yes or no? Did him leaving dishes in the sink create my anger? No, right? Okay. Me thinking that's so rude and insensitive generated my anger. So I'm choosing to feel anger in that moment. I'm choosing to think thoughts that make me feel angry. I'm the only one experiencing the anger, right? And I'm not saying we never want to feel angry. What we're talking about here is taking 100% responsibility for our experience in the world, right? And for how we are generating our own experience with our thoughts and our feelings. We just want to be mindful of that and aware of that and be choosing that mindfully and intentionally when we can, right? So just to finish it out, my action might be that I tell him, you are so rude and insensitive for leaving those dishes in the sink or for letting the dogs out when I was doing an online workshop, right? Then what am I doing? I'm being rude and insensitive, right? So the result reinforces the thought, he's so rude and insensitive, but really what I'm doing with this cycle is I'm generating more insensitivity and more frustration and anger and discord in my relationship by choosing to look at it this way, right? Now, here's the alternative version, and I'll just look at what's going on in the chat real quick, and then I'll share the alternative version. Where is the chat? Here it is. Okay. So, so I'm hearing that these are common issues, the dishes in the sink issues, right? And then you have to apologize. Exactly. So when I lash out over some minor thing that I could have just changed my thoughts about, then I have to go back and apologize. And that's a whole other model, right? So I'm just hearing that people can relate, and I appreciate that. So take a look at, and I recognize that this is a really simple, simplistic example, dishes in the sink, no big deal. But I promise you, you can apply the same process to a lot of the much bigger issues. And being able to take responsibility for the fact that what other people do doesn't determine how I feel is probably one of the biggest reasons I've been able to be happily married for 26 years, right? So think about the impact of doing this kind of work and analysis and using the model on much bigger issues in relationships, but we're looking at it simply here. So my husband leaves dishes in the sink. I could choose to think, you know what? I love and appreciate all that he's doing. He's doing so much right now to help us and to keep us safe. And we're both small business owners, so he's looking into programs for paycheck protection programs and grants, and he's working really hard to keep his business going and do things that will help and support our family. I can choose to think about those things, right? And how do I feel when I think those things? I feel loving. I feel appreciative for my husband. I feel grateful. And you know what I do is I pop in my AirPods and I listen to an awesome podcast that I've been wanting to listen to, and I wash those dishes and I enjoy it, and I do it mindfully, or I rinse them with warm water and I put them in the dishwasher, and I'm happy to do that for him, right? And the result is love, appreciation, kindness in my home. And that's what I want to generate. Now, I want to say it's not always this easy. And sometimes we're angry and sometimes we feel hurt. And maybe we want to do something about it. Maybe sometimes we do want to make a request. Of course, it's my option to think, I am going to ask my husband to do his own dishes, right? The options are endless, and we can make reasonable requests. But the reality is we often have what we call manuals, okay? And in the Life Coach School program, we learned about manuals, and manuals are basically like this. This is the Handbook of Interpersonal Communication from grad school. So this is a good example of a nice thick manual, right? So we have a manual for a person. It's metaphor, obviously, and it has all these rules. You should do this, and you should do that, and you should never say this to me, and you should tell me you love me every day, and you should tell me I'm beautiful 5 times a day, right? And this manual is full of all these rules that usually are never spoken, right? How often do you hear someone say, well, he should just know. Well, she shouldn't have done that because she should have just known that it would upset me. Well, you know what? These manuals need to be thrown away, okay? If you want to make a request of someone, you've got a voice, make it, and make it kindly and out of love, right? And make sure it's reasonable, that you're not asking someone else to be responsible for your feelings and your emotional life and your emotional well-being, right? So the manual needs to go, right? Boundaries are great. Requests are fine if they're reasonable, but manuals need to go. The idea of the manual is that it's all these rules for another person, and what we're doing is saying that our emotional well-being and our emotional health rests on someone following all these rules in this unspoken manual, and that's giving away all our power. We create our thoughts, we create our feelings, we create our experience in the world. Other people create their own thoughts and feelings and experiences, and we intersect when we intersect in healthy ways when we take responsibility for our part, they take responsibility for their part, and then we come together in loving ways with open communication to make that all work in relationship, right? And now I do want to say, I want a little disclaimer that I am not talking about abusive relationships. That's an entirely different situation. Everything I just said was in relation to relatively healthy, functional relationships where even in the most relatively healthy functional relationships like mine, there are disagreements and conflict and difficulties, right? That's what we're talking about here. That how can you mindfully, intentionally be aware of what you're thinking and how much control it has over how you feel, and think about what you want to be thinking and feeling about the people who you may be quarantined with right now. So that's the manual. That's the self-coaching model. Looks like everybody gets it, can relate to it. I know I gave a simple example of dishes in the sink and dogs barking, but hey, that's what a lot of us are dealing with now. And if there are bigger issues, you can apply it there too. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kwak. And unless anybody has any questions about everything I just shared or any comments, I really appreciate your comments that you're you're acknowledging that what I shared here is relatable and resonates with you. And I really appreciate that. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Kwak for medical updates and more lessons, such as the very important concept of confirmation bias.
Awesome. Thank you, Bridget. Love that. Okay, so let's start with medical updates first today. So first, a little overview and review. So COVID-19, that's the name of the illness that is caused by this new strain of a coronavirus. So coronaviruses have been in existence, I don't know how long, much longer than we have been on this planet, us here. And there are multiple common illnesses caused by coronaviruses, such as the common cold. But COVID, this new illness, is caused by a new strain, a new type of coronavirus that was not known to exist prior to it emerging. It was not known to exist in humans, I should say, prior to it emerging out of China late last year. So that is one of the main reasons why there's so much that we don't know about this infection and know about this illness. And I think about the illnesses that we've known of long before I was alive, that we still have almost just scratched the surface of understanding in a sense. And now we have a brand new infection, brand new illness. So there's a lot of information that will continue to change and evolve over time, as we've already seen. So the symptoms of this infection, as you've probably heard by now, range hugely from a decent percent of people probably having no symptoms at all once they've come in contact with this infection and even are infected. So there's a certain percentage of people who are infected, don't have any symptoms, and are still contagious to others. And from there, symptoms can range from mild cold symptoms to mild gastrointestinal symptoms to the much more severe lung illnesses and respiratory issues, and even respiratory failure and cardiac failure that we're seeing in the more severe cases. So the symptoms are really variable. I wanted to touch on the terms quarantine and isolation. I don't think I've clarified those in the past, but typically when we say someone's in quarantine, it's someone who was exposed to an infection and they are quarantining themselves for a period of time to see if they develop symptoms of that infection after being exposed. So, for example, the current guidelines from the Center for Disease Control are to quarantine yourself for 14 days if you've had a known exposure to COVID, because it can take that long for symptoms to appear. So we keep you in quarantine for those 14 days to see if symptoms appear for you after that known exposure. So that's what we call quarantine. And then isolation is if you are sick, and sometimes that's a confirmed illness with COVID. Sometimes it's COVID symptoms, but we don't have a test or haven't confirmed it. But we ask someone to isolate when they are sick to prevent spreading that to other people. So those are how the terms are typically used. The Center for Disease Control has given guidelines to isolate yourself if you are sick until 72 hours have passed after your symptoms have started improving and your fever is gone, and 7 days have to have passed since your symptoms first started. So that's a general guideline, whether you've actually been diagnosed with COVID or if you're just feeling sick, but not necessarily sick enough to be evaluated or seen or tested. You should isolate yourself if you're feeling sick 72 hours after fever has resolved and symptoms are improving and 7 days have passed since your symptoms first started. So just a little clarification there. Well, to get to the numbers, as of, I think it was around noon, the last numbers I saw, noon Central Time, in our country, there were about 432,596 confirmed cases of COVID and 14,831 deaths from COVID, which is a 3.4% death rate based on those numbers. But as I've said every week, we know that, well, we know, I use that term very loosely right now, but the data is still suggesting that the death rate is much lower than that. We're hoping it is truly closer to around 0.6%, just because we don't have the capacity to test many people in this country still. So we know that total number of cases is actually much, much larger than that 432,000 is suggesting. And on the good news, in terms of number of cases and fatalities, social distancing, you may have seen in the news recently, does seem to be working. Like, we're doing a pretty decent job of it. And based on the models that the White House is using, if we continue social distancing measures through August, they're expecting a much lower fatality rate than they had originally estimated around. I think the original numbers were in the hundreds of thousands based on minimal social distancing. And then it had come down to around 80,000, I believe, was an estimated fatality rate by August with more social distancing. But now, based on what we've been doing and the numbers, they're hoping for closer to a 60,000 estimate of fatalities by August, but that's if we keep social distancing. So that really, really seems to be working for flattening the curve and lowering the mortality rate, or lowering the fatalities from this, which is awesome. And I don't know about you guys, maybe it's because I'm in the office and we're doing it all the time with our hand sanitizer, but in mask, we're always masking around each other here, even in the office, but it's kind of becoming routine for me. I don't know if it's not for you guys yet. Hopefully it will soon, but it's almost just becoming like second nature. Like, oh, I touched something, like, let me grab this. And oh, someone else might have touched that. Like, let me get my sanitizer out, and or my like Clorox wipe. And it's, I don't know, it's almost becoming just second nature. And I'm like, why wasn't I ever doing this before? Like, I'm thinking of my hygiene practices before, and I'm like, even at work, I would eat my lunch like at my workstation a lot, which is like a nurse's station. And I'm like, why did I ever do that? Like, it just seems really, I guess, coming back to what probably I should have been doing for a while anyway, with the cleaning and this. So anyway, I hope that's becoming easier for you guys too, getting in the hang of that. I guess, well, let's see if there's any specific questions on that. Yes, I've heard that. Yeah, I think Dr. Fauci said that the other day, like shaking hands may be a thing of the past, which it has been in other cultures for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Or I don't know if it ever was part of those cultures, but I don't know. My husband's family is from South Korea, and I kind of like their respectful bows to each other. It's pretty cool. I like it. These precautions. Transmitted to animals, yeah. So I know there was oh my gosh, I'm sure we saw the animal. Which animal was it in New York?
Right?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, and there was 1 or 2 case reports out of China, out of a dog getting it too, but I don't think any of those 3 animals actually seemed very sick. The couple of dogs or the tiger, at least from what I had read. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they don't seem to be getting very, like, actually sick from it. And they haven't seen evidence that animals can give it to humans.
Oh, so the tiger, I don't know, I'm not updated on that either, but the tiger did. Lori, are you saying the tiger did get pretty sick? Is that what the report is? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And Cherise said prayer hands work great too, which I love that, Cherise. Yes, Cherise is one of my favorite yoga teachers and Ayurvedic teachers, and we do prayer hands a lot. So I agree. She's showing us. Yeah, we'll come up with other ways. We will still connect, and we will still greet and spread love, and we'll come up with other ways. It doesn't necessarily require touching. Yeah, so lion and other tigers did get sick.
What kind of symptoms did they get? I mean, I can look it up later. That's okay. But I'm just curious. Were they coughing?
Yeah.
How about that? Okay.
Yeah, coughing, not eating.
How about that? Okay.
That it's really fascinating that it's something that animals can have a similar experience with.
All right. Well, if more questions come in, we can look at them, but I will move on to confirmation bias. Let me grab my.
There was one more question, Dr. Kwak. Should we wear a mask if we go for a walk? Good question. So a lot of us are still walking in our neighborhoods. I am as well. Do you think we need a mask if we're not really going to be near any people, or what do you think?
No, this is a surgical mask. So that kind of mask and the cloth masks that the CDC and World Health Organization are saying are fine to wear, those are just to protect other people from getting sick from you. Those aren't very effective for protecting us from getting sick. So that kind of mask is just if you have to be around other people, especially if you have to be around someone and you think you'll be closer than 6 feet, it's so you don't get them sick. Like if you happen to be an asymptomatic carrier or minimally symptomatic person with it. Yeah, so if you're going on a walk by yourself or like with someone who you live with that you guys are already in close contact with each other, then no, I would see no reason to wear a mask for such a situation. But if you're going on a walk where you might inadvertently come in contact with other people, then you might want to have it with you in case I don't know why that would come up, but if there had to be a situation on that walk where you had to be closer in contact with someone, then have it with you. But
okay,
otherwise,
no. And Lori's saying masks are mandatory in New York. Okay. And that makes sense. In New York's been hit so hard, and being really cautious makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
Hand sanitizer. Thank you for.
I know. It's not even. I didn't even.
The hand sanitizer. Love it.
Like, okay. Second nature. I have it. Okay. So let's see. Can you see this?
Yeah. Are you able to zoom? We had one more question. How does a mask only work one way? So that's a good question. Because I've heard that a lot too, that the mask is protecting other people, but why is it not protecting us also from their germs coming into us?
I mean, in theory, it might be a little bit, but it's not. We don't consider it an effective measure, not that kind. An N95 or the K95s and the N95s, those are used to protect the person wearing it for sure. It has to do with the size of particles that can get through. If you're around someone who's like coughing and spewing, like a healthcare provider who's has to be close to someone who's coughing and there's respiratory droplets, flying through the air forcefully. So those do, but these just don't have the ability to filter out like forceful respiratory droplets coming from someone else. But we don't have great data on how protective this is. There's very small, limited studies I've seen that show that these are even that effective for protecting other people. But it seems to be that it's better than nothing. I don't know what the percentage of efficacy rate is for this, but yeah, it just helps some of the droplets from getting out if you were to sneeze or cough.
Okay, that makes sense. We'll take more questions when we get to after Dr. Kwak shares her next little piece with us on confirmation bias.
Okay, so what did you want me to do? Which way?
That looks good. It's just we can't see the whole thing.
Okay. So, I'll get down there.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah, you can lift it up. Okay, great.
Okay, so the past 2 weeks we've talked a little bit about some psychology, neuroscience terms. So this week I'm throwing out a term called confirmation bias. So last week we touched on cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is that psychological discomfort we feel when we hold conflicting beliefs, or we have a belief and we're confronted with conflicting information, and it's like trying to make sense of conflicting information in our brain. And that cognitive dissonance is that discomfort that we feel in that experience. So confirmation bias is one of the shortcuts that our brain takes to avoid or resolve cognitive dissonance. So what's interesting to me about this is that I think a lot of times, if not most of the time, this is even happening subconsciously or unconsciously, before we even get to that level of awareness of what the brain's doing. So because cognitive dissonance, that's my CD, cognitive dissonance, because that's uncomfortable, the brain perceives that as like a danger or a threat and wants to get out of it. And this confirmation bias is one of the ways it does that. So what's happening in confirmation bias is the brain is naturally seeking out information that matches what we already believe. And when the brain is confronted with new information or new data, it will automatically assess that data or interpret that data through the lens of what we already believe, of our current belief structures. So this is just a way of keeping things kind of kosher in the brain, of keeping things seeming right or seeming in harmony or in unison. That's the brain as a machine, as a piece of equipment, works the most efficiently when it's able to keep everything lined up, making sense. With a belief, interpret data, keep interpreting data in line with what we already believe, just very efficient. So as a piece of equipment up here, that's just how the brain naturally works. So this is my beautiful attempt at art, or not so beautiful. We can back up a little bit. So here's a person looking through some sort of telescope through the lens of beliefs. So everything happening out here in the world, all the words we're hearing, the events that are happening, actions other people are taking, even how we view ourselves, will all be looked at through the lens of what our current belief systems are. And this process of the brain seeing data and interpreting it in a way that's already in line with what we think and believe, it's happening all the time, like pretty much nonstop in our natural state, for sure. And that's the way it has to be. That's the way the brain seems to have developed. So it's just the way of it. But if you remember back 2 weeks ago when we had talked about the prefrontal cortex and the primitive brain, and again, this is a very simplistic, I suppose, view of this, but that's okay. If there's neuroscientists out there, this is simple. But the prefrontal cortex is that evolved part of the human brain that we don't think other animals have, at least not to the extent that we have. And that's the part of our brain that we can use to kind of step outside of our experience and have these metacognitive experiences where we're thinking about our thinking, where we're thinking about what our brain is doing. We're thinking about, we can actually think about our brain as a piece of equipment running on confirmation bias and trying to avoid cognitive dissonance. And in doing that, I can just bring a lot of awareness to why we are the way we are, why other people might be the way they are, why we do what we do. Just knowing that that's how the brain is kind of always trying to work and function in the background. So we can have that awareness. And from there, we can start to think about, well, if I have belief systems and I like them and they're serving me well, then that's fine. We don't need to question them and let that confirmation bias be running all the time. Fine. But probably all of us humans have some belief systems that aren't serving us very well. And it might behoove us to become aware of those and decide, is there something we might want to do differently here? Is there some new belief system we might want to take on here? And this comes up all the time in life coaching. An example, this is weight loss is such a common topic and theme. There's a common belief people have that they can't lose weight. Like that's just kind of running in the background. Like someone who's trying to lose weight, but they believe, whether it's conscious or not, I can't lose weight. Like it's not possible for me. And then with that belief system, it's everything that happens is then interpreted through that belief system. So if you don't lose weight for a week, it's, well, I can't lose weight anyway, so that makes sense. That's why. So that's a common one. With what Bridget talked about with manuals and relationships, you can see how this could easily come up. And as an aside, these can be beliefs that are like deeply ingrained, or even just kind of, I would call them even temporary belief systems. Like, there are periods of time when I believe my husband is super annoying, but it's not like a deeply ingrained belief. But when I'm in one of those times, then everything he does is interpreted as him being an annoying person. And he could be doing the exact same activity or thing that he had done 2 weeks earlier when I wasn't in that headspace of that temporary belief system of he's annoying. But then there's other, obviously, more deeply ingrained belief systems. And, that could even go back to the one about weight loss. It could be even deeper beliefs about ourselves. That comes up a lot in life coaching when we uncover a belief that, oh, I don't think I deserve that, or I don't think it's possible for me to make more money than I am, or I deserve to be punished for whatever. So there are some deeper beliefs that we can get to too. But so how that pertains to all of this, I suppose I like to bring it around to our current world situation. I mean, there's so many places it does, but what comes to mind for me is even with, politicians. Like, if you currently or have always thought that our president was great, then what he says you'll interpret as being great. And if you have always thought he wasn't great, then you'll interpret what he says as not being great. It's very uncommon to have someone who thinks, oh, the president is not great, and then he says something that maybe is great, and then you change your belief. No, what happens with confirmation bias is that you'll still interpret what he said, even if there could be facts that it was, or more people could agree it was a great thing, you would still interpret it as a not great thing if your deep belief is he's not great, and vice versa. If you think he's great and he says something that most people would say is not great, or there's facts that say that it wasn't true, and those confirmation bias will still have you somehow make up a story or interpret it so that he still looks great in your eyes. So it works both ways. In terms of, well, I guess I think that's a good enough example for how that comes around here. But that's the one I see popping up a lot, and I just wanted to mention. So that is what I have to say about confirmation bias. So questions, thoughts?
Dr. Kwak, I don't know if we have time or if you want to get into it, but there was a question about herd immunity, if herd immunity applies in the case of the coronavirus. If you want to touch on that at all. I know it's kind of a can of worms, but any thoughts?
So is it a real thing? Yes, we do think that is a real thing, but that typically applies when that applies when we know there's immunity being had some way, whether it's immunity through, we usually use that term when we're talking about immunizations. And if a large enough percentage of the population is immunized, then that by default will protect people who aren't immunized, because the illness doesn't have enough non-immunized people to take hold and spread through the population. Mm-hmm. But there's a threshold where you can reach, of course, where even if a certain percentage of the population is immunized, that herd immunity might not apply. That can be overcome if enough of the population isn't immunized. So that's usually when we use that term. I suppose it could be used with natural immunity too, but we don't know what that's going to look like for this virus. We don't know if once you've had it, if you're naturally immune forever, for a month, for a year, we don't know yet what that's going to look like. So we're not really using that term for COVID at all yet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? What do we have? How important it is to, oh yeah. So we talked about this in the first session, but I definitely think it's worth touching on again is, and it's a great example of the self-coaching model. The question is about how much we're taking in terms of news and social media and information and sources that are really causing us to have thoughts that generate a lot of fear, and spending a lot of time compulsively consuming the very fear-based information. Now we want to stay informed, and I think it takes a certain amount of time a day. It's probably not that much time to make sure we're informed on the latest updates and that we understand what's going on. And then it's really important for us to make conscious, intentional choices about how much more media we're going to take in, especially news. If it's really fear-based and it's just repeating the same things over and over that we already know, really important to protect and safeguard our mental health, our well-being, to remember, if our thoughts create our feelings, and we're constantly thinking about, this is horrible, the world is ending, everybody's going to die, how are we going to be feeling all day? And then what kind of actions are we going to be taking in the world? We're not going to be in a good place to serve others and to help ourselves and to be loving with our loved ones. So I think I'm really glad that that was mentioned here. It's mentioned to me privately, actually, but I wanted to bring it up since someone in the group did mention it. Really important to think about. Any other thoughts or questions? Meditation is a great tool to combat, I think, confirmation bias, right? Yes. I'm a huge fan of meditation and have meditated with my beloved Charisse, who's here many times, and her husband, Adam, who are meditation teachers and leaders in our community. And so absolutely, meditation is highly recommended. Prayer, whatever works for you to center and get calm and really manage your mind and be aware that you're creating so much of your experience in your own mind and your own body. So let's do that intentionally. We would like to, if there's anything else, we'll see if there's any final questions or music. Yes, Jerome, I totally agree. Music, such a great source of healing and calm and inspiration. We did want to offer free coaching. Well, obviously free, I should say. We just want to offer friendly coaching. We're both certified as life coaches, and we'd love to, if anybody wants to come on and just have a really safe, open space to share anything that you're struggling with. Just to reiterate that coaching is not giving advice. Coaching is holding a safe space to listen and hear what someone's going through and ask some questions to help them dive into it deeper and maybe gain some new insight about what's going on and what they might want to do about that, if anything. So is there anybody out there who would like a little bit of on the spot coaching? And it would be in front of everyone, but I can guarantee you that everyone here is wonderful and loving and empathetic and is probably going through similar challenges. So if anybody wants to volunteer for a little coaching, please, you can just unmute yourself and speak up, or you can write something in the chat.
Bridget, it's your cousin.
Hi.
Yes. I just wanted to say, after my total meltdown last week, I've had a much better week. I did have a breakdown with my daughter on the phone and with one of the grandkids, and they were very understanding. And after that, I seem to be doing much better. I really have not had a breakdown again. And this is week 4 for me here. So 28 days today and of self-isolation with my 2 animals. And I'm actually doing I have to say really well. I FaceTime all the time with the grandkids, and it's not the same, but it's better than nothing. So I thank you for listening last week, because it really helped tremendously.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Lori. And we were all I see Deb smiling and clapping, and we were with you, and we just wanted to hold that space for you to let your feelings out, because we're all experiencing grief and loss and missing the people we love and we're used to seeing. So I think we were all just feeling right there with you, all the same things. And I was so happy to hear when you shared with me after that you did let it go with your daughter, because as parents, a lot of us are thinking we have to be strong for our kids and we can't let them see us suffering or struggling, but really we're all in this together. So it's a beautiful it's beautiful for you to be willing to share with us that you did let that go with your daughter, and it was a positive. I have no doubt it was a positive experience for both of you to just let that out and have that openness. There's nothing to hide, and all the feelings are welcome. And when we talk about the self-coaching model, it's really important that people don't misunderstand it to think that it means avoiding negative emotion. It's in fact the opposite. That whatever we're thinking and feeling is fine if it's what we want. And if we're thinking thoughts about how sad a situation is or how we're missing people and it makes us feel sad, we can be with that. We can sit with that. We can allow that. We can cry. We can cry with ourselves. We can cry with our children, with other people. It's all healthy and welcome. And we just want to be aware of it. So thank you for sharing that with us, Lori. It sounds like it was helpful. And also you're such an amazing person, and you're so aware and loving and kind. And so it's not surprising that all it's happening. And if you can be, you're there by yourself, you're not getting your medical treatments that are very important, you're going through a lot. And I think it can be really helpful for us all to stay connected with each other and have some perspective, and think, well, I may be struggling this way. Other people are dealing with things that are even more challenging in a lot of ways. And how can I be of support? And how can I be of help? I was talking with a friend yesterday about her situation. So she said her 92-year-old neighbor has health issues, is all alone, and is a shut-in. So for her, helping her neighbor is the thing that she's doing that makes her feel best, so we're all trying to be there for each other. So thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to share anything or ask anything? It doesn't have to be coaching. You know what? Yes, Deb.
Well, I had an interesting epiphany this week. And the epiphany was that on Tuesday, my sister Barb, who's on here, we were talking, and she said, "Oh, your bread looks so delicious. I would love some." And immediately, now recognize I'm in Idaho, she's in Oklahoma. I immediately thought, oh, I was going to make bread anyway. I should really try and send her some in a box that I'm preparing. So in doing that, I wasn't planning on doing that day. My heart rate went up to, it was sustained over 100 for 48 hours. I don't want to say anxiety, but my drive. I mean, I'm driven anyway, but my drive was just on overload. And then I started feeling these symptoms of, I can't get my breath. I'm short of breath. I can't get air in my lungs every time I deep breathe. And that caused anxiety. And then I just felt some chest pressure when I would breathe. And it just, which is why I was not feeling well the last couple days. And when Barb and I talked last night, she said, you really ought to be coached today or tomorrow. And I said, no, I don't think I need to be coached. I think I know what I need to do. I need to think about what I need right now, as well as what other people need. And even though people are blessed to get my little videos, or they're blessed to get my bread, or they're blessed, blah, 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 whatever, I need to just say to me that it's okay to sit back and watch TV for a day, or take a nap, or I don't have to be everybody's protector. You know what I mean?
Yes. How many of you have been feeling that way? Anybody else? Can anybody relate? Like feeling pressure to be there for others and forgetting to be there for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the first question needs to be, what do I need? What support do I need? And then when we can fill ourselves up, we can then, if we want to, be of service to others. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so glad you realized that, Deb, and thank you for sharing with us that it's really even impacting you physiologically, right? In terms of your health and your blood pressure. This is what we do to ourselves. And guess what? It's the thoughts. It's all the thoughts. And that's where we have to look for power, is to change the thought, from the thought that we may not even realize we're having. It sounds like that you may have been having in many, I need to help. I need to bake more bread for people. I need to deliver for people. I need to do these inspirational, right? So it's just that thought. There's nothing, no objective reality out in the world that you must be doing. We're all out there thinking, why hasn't Deb done this yet today, right? You know that logically, but our brains go crazy telling us all these things. And just in that moment to be able to get quiet and center and go, I can just take care of myself.
Yeah.
And once I'm calm and my blood pressure's under control and my needs are met, then I can think about if I want to do what and if I want to do, if anything, right? So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's so powerful and such an important reminder in this time for those of us who are givers and helpers. We gotta nourish ourselves first, otherwise we'll be no good to anybody. Yeah, we have a couple comments in the chat. So Barb, so we have a couple hand raised. Yeah, so Jerome's reinforcing important to get our needs met first. Barb, did you want to share or ask? I see. Are you raising your hand, Barb? Am I seeing that picture correctly? Or just agreeing? I'm thinking, you know what? Just agreeing,
I was saying,
yes,
amen, Jesus. That's what I was saying.
Yes, we're in, a lot of us are in, the kind of people who would come to a workshop like this are probably those kind of people, right? Who are like trying to lift ourselves up and sustain ourselves so that we can help everybody else.
Bridget, what she's saying is she's so glad, she's praising the Lord that I had the epiphany after I sent the box.
So you got your bread, Barb, right? You got your goodies. And then Deb stopped baking and started taking care of herself. Okay. Very good. All right. Any other comments or questions? It's funny that, it's totally fine if no one wants coaching. I think, part of why we share this self-coaching model is, remember, it is called the self-coaching model. And so Barb is a perfect example of how, with the folks that we've been sharing it with for a couple weeks, it's starting to become pretty natural to realize, okay, whatever's causing me stress in this situation is what I'm thinking. Stress is a feeling. So how can I, if I work with what I'm thinking, change my thoughts to feel something different, whether it's to feel better or to allow the feelings of sadness. Remember, it's whatever feelings need to be felt. It's all good, but it's our thoughts that generate that. So we can coach ourselves through that. How do we want to think? How do we want to feel? And how does that create our experience in the world? Other questions, comments, or examples?
I have a comment.
Please.
It's more, I guess because, New York here, it's gotten really bad. So I've had to do research on how to make face masks because my son is working in a hospital in the city and I'm really concerned about him. So if anyone who has to make face masks, they said, hold up the material to the light. If you can see through it, it's not good. That you have to do several layers. And they also said, if you have coffee filters, stick a coffee filter inside of the materials, and that will also help both blocking your breath going out and others coming in. So that's just some info if people need to make some face masks out there.
Thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense. Does that sound right to you, Melissa? Anything you would add to that or caution on that?
I don't know the specifics, honestly, on making your own. I haven't had to do that, but I know that in my state, the Illinois Department of Public Health has put out a flyer for all of the residents in Illinois with specific instructions on how you can make your own. What I could do, and I think that's only sent out to our residents, but I can put a link to that here because it's really helpful. There's links to like exactly what they think meet the criteria for a homemade mask. So if I can just take a second to go into my email to do that, I'll post the link in the chat.
Great. Yeah, so thank you for that, Lori. I mean, it makes sense. We should really be following the guidelines that we see and that we research in our officials, but it makes a lot of sense to me, to just hearing it, to put as many layers as you can and use a filter to increase your protection. Absolutely.
Is everyone in the pandemic positivity
Yes.
Facebook group? Because I'll post, I've got a lot of emails to sift through to find that one. So I'll post it in there. If that works?
Yes.
Okay. That link there? Okay. Cool.
So,
if anybody's not in pandemic positivity, please join on Facebook and find me there. Charles, go ahead.
So, Bridget, so one of the things that I specialize in is really not only just getting your needs met, but knowing what needs you need to get met. So, for instance, for me, I'm an imaginer rebel, which, hey, surprise, surprise. And so I have two needs that have to get met on a regular basis. One is solitude, to reflect and sort of take some time to kind of take in everything I'm hearing or listening to and sort of make some decisions based on that. And the other is I'm a rebel and I need spontaneity and I need playful and creative activity. So when I'm looking at my needs, I have to look at, okay, I can serve others as long as I'm getting those needs met. If I don't get those needs met, it's like someone calling me and saying, hey, Jerome, can you come help me? I'm out of gas. And I jump in my car and I turn the ignition and I don't have any gas. But I'm still going to try to figure out how to help them, but I don't have the gas to even get there. So I start walking to get there, and then I get there and I can't help them. So it's really understanding how to fulfill yourself so that you can assist others.
Beautiful. Barb says you sound like a kindred spirit, Jerome.
Oh,
people are
well,
really
thank you.
relating. Yeah, and in this time where there's so much need and we want so much to support and help each other, really remember what you just said. It's an important reminder. Thank you so much for that. I could not agree more. Absolutely.
Jerome, can I ask what sort of process you use to get that understanding of yourself?
I'm a certified process communication model coach. And so it's, there's 6 basically personalities traits that we have. There's traits in us, not traits of us, meaning that trait doesn't define me. So even though I'm an imaginer rebel, you can't say, well, Jerome's an imaginer rebel. No, that's just a personality trait. So there's 6 traits: harmonizer, thinker, persister, imaginer, rebel, and promoter. And all those traits have strengths and they have needs. And the needs are going to either be met positively or negatively. So the main thing is it's not similar to your model, is making sure you're going to get those needs met one way or the other. So one is going to be yelling at someone, or another one is like, I just need to get to a space in this house where, even if it's the bathroom, and just sit there for a minute and kind of calm myself. So it's called process communication model. It's been around. President Clinton used it to run his election. It's really just understanding everybody's personality. Like a thinker, persister is different than an imaginer rebel. And so understanding that. But I'll share it with you and Bridget, and we can talk about it.
That's cool. I like the idea of that as like a framework. Like I can imagine times when I felt like burned out or overwhelmed, and I'm like, why? Like, what do I need to do next? And to have a framework like that of, like, this is what I often haven't filled my tank up with. And maybe if I just forget sometimes, like I forget like, I need that to take care of me. And that would be like a helpful framework.
For instance, go back to the dishes in the sink thing. So Gail and I have this constant thing going. I'm an imaginer. She's a harmonizer. So I walked into the kitchen last week, and it was I could smell the garbage, but I was gonna have lunch. So I fixed my lunch and I was going to walk out. She walks in the kitchen and goes, "Don't you smell that?" And I go, "No, I don't smell it. I really did, but it didn't matter to me." But for her, her sensory, her environment is way different. Her needs for her environment are way different than mine. I wasn't eating my sandwich in the kitchen. I was going to the den to watch something funny and eat my sandwich. She couldn't even make her sandwich because her sensory needs weren't being met. So so for me, I was going to empty the garbage when I finished eating. She took it out and just took it outside and emptied it before she could even prepare to eat. So those are different traits.
Yeah,
I would love to learn more about that, Jerome. And it sounds like it really coincides with everything that we've been talking about as well.
It does.
Or you understand yourself and others, and know what's going on in your own thinking and how different it is. Like the manual is all about how we expect other people to be following our rules and meeting our needs and thinking and experiencing things the same way we are. But we're all living such different realities that are colliding, right? So she really, in my case, like if I'm thinking my husband should be a certain way, I have to look internally and go, no, I must have a certain need that needs to be met that I can meet myself. When we look at people, like Right. So she didn't expect you should stop eating your sandwich and come do this, because she was the one with the needs. So she did it. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially in marriage, because we have this fairy tale, image of marriage that we're sold, like this person's going to complete you and meet all your needs, and that's what we're set up for, for a lot of disappointment, because ultimately we really need to meet our own needs, and then we can come to the other person whole and share joy and connection and do things for each other, not out of needing them, but out of generosity and kindness and love, right? But that's not, so it takes a long time to really realize that.
So so everybody that's on here, you just go on to Google and look up process communication model, process communication model. And there's a lot of good video up by the company that sort of certifies everyone, and you get a little bit more background and interest. And if you have any questions, Bridget has my contact. You can also reach out. But Bridget and I are going to work together, because we had a little fun little contest that she won. You want to tell them about it, Bridget?
Yeah, so Jerome posted a little video, which was awesome, that he created, helping a friend promote some fitness work that he's doing. And there was, I guess, a typo in the final product, and Jerome challenged his audience, if anyone could find the typo, that they could get 20% with him. So I was right on it. I found the typo, and I am gonna cash in on my coaching session with Jerome. But also, Jerome and I had a really good conversation, and Dr. Kwak will appreciate this, and it might be useful for some of the rest of you who want to be of value, is that if we wait for perfection to put our work and our contribution out into the world, it'll never happen, right? Because there's really no such thing. And what perfection to me is might not be, somebody else out there might hate it, right? So we've got to put ourselves out there in the ways that we can to be of service and value. And if there's a little mistake, it's perfectly fine. In our coaching program, our teacher teaches us, as long as it's B-, you're good. Like, put your B- out there. And then if you can get to A, great, A or A+, but don't hold back, because it's not absolutely perfect, because people want and need our value. And it's that imperfection and that learning and growth that helps us connect and helps us to just put ourselves out there and be sharing. So let's see. Okay. So I think some people are saying goodbye. It was so good to see you here.
It's great.
Lori and Charisse, thank you so much. Charisse is saying her son is calling her to make her lunch, and so Charisse and Adam are homeschooling their adorable son Jacob. And I know Lori's got to run. And if anybody wants to ask us anything else, and definitely look up process communication model, what Jerome shared with us. It sounds really exciting to look into in more depth. And if you want more on anything that Dr. Kwak and I talked about today, please feel free to reach out to us. You all know where to find us. So does anybody have any final questions or comments? You're welcome to share in the chat.
I'll share. Can I share vocally?
Jamie, yes, this is my dear friend Jamie. Share.
Hi.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi, everybody. So I wanted to share because this week I was told I own a summer day camp, and we rent our space from Pierce Community Colleges, which is a local college out here in Los Angeles. And I was told that they are going to be closed for the summer, and we don't have a location. And I think I struggled mostly with the fact, well, besides the financial impact that it has on my family, I was struggling with the fact that I really feel that my summer camp is something that defines me. It's who I am. I've done this for 41 years now. I've owned my own business. I mean, I started as a junior counselor when I was 14 years old. And now I'm an adult, and this is how I support myself. But I was struggling with, how can I turn this around? How can I make it so that it doesn't define me, that I'm so much more than just my summer camp, but it's just what I know and what I do and what I know I do well. So I was struggling with that this week, and trying to figure out other ways. If it doesn't happen at Pierce, will we be able to have it somewhere else? Can we make it a travel camp where we don't even have a location? So that stuff's easy. I can think on my feet that way. But just the whole fact that if it doesn't happen, who am I?
Yeah, Jamie, that makes a lot of sense. And a lot of us who are business owners are experiencing that because we probably didn't even realize the depth to which we defined ourselves by what we do. And when what we do is taken away for a time, it's a time to reevaluate and reassess, who am I really, right? And how do I define myself? What is my identification? It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen quickly or easily. So if you're still struggling, obviously, we're all still struggling with that. But if you use the self-coaching model, it's like your thoughts are, but my identity is being, someone who owns a summer camp and runs a summer camp every summer. You're having those thoughts, you're allowing those thoughts, and those thoughts make you feel sad and anxious, and just processing that and sitting with that and being with that and allowing that is super healthy, and sharing it with us is super healthy because we're all experiencing it too with some of our ways that we identify ourselves. And at the same time, in the other thought models that are going on in your mind, and I know because you've shared this with me when we chatted the other night with our group, you're also having a lot of thoughts about what else can I do? What other opportunities would there be? How can we think outside the box, right? So you're also having lots of thoughts about other possibilities and how you can still do some things out in the world, right? So all of those can be happening together, and just being aware of it. You just seem really aware of it, and like you're allowing it. Is that true?
Yeah, but it's just breaking my heart a little bit. But whatever.
Yep.
I feel like we're healthy and we're alive and we're better off than most. My husband's still working, so
Yep.
I mean, I have to be thankful for that and just move forward. But it's just really hard. It's really hard.
It is.
I love Barb's response in the chat. Barb's already started to answer that question. Who am I? For you, you're an innovator. I think that's so cool. But Jamie, have you started to answer that question for yourself? Who am I if this doesn't happen, or no?
I don't think I'm quite there yet. I think I'm still mourning the loss, and I think I need to, but listen, I've always said I'm a mom. I have so many great things that I get to be, and I'm so lucky, but it's just this one really, I guess because since I've been 14 years old, this is all I've done. And I think also that I'm looking at these people, these parents that are writing me these emails asking me what's happening, and I don't have the answers for them. So that's hard for me because I usually feel like I can bullshit my way through anything, and this I can't. And then the other part is that their kids are so disappointed. And and I feel so lucky that I get to go to work every day during the summer and love what I do and love these kids, and my staff is amazing. So I applied for that payroll protection program so I can pay my directors who have been working for free since January. I want to be able to just give them something. And so I feel like I really do have to work more on what my new self is going to become. And I feel like over time, maybe it will just evolve, but I don't know. I'm just still mourning that loss. I don't know. I'm not making sense, but
no, you are.
Jamie, you are. You're making total
you
sense.
Are.
Jerome, did you want to respond?
No, Jamie, this is Jerome. How you doing?
I see you. You just can't see me. Here, I'm going to unplug I'm going to let you see how disgusting I look.
Yeah,
let's see. Let's see.
Okay, I got to open this. Hold on.
Hey.
Curly Jamie.
It's curly Jamie here.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think what you're hitting on is all of us. It's really funny. Around December, I started feeling this really huge change in my life, and I started sort of letting some things go. So I let my basketball camp go in December. I let some other things that I normally traditionally do, not knowing this was coming up. So it's almost like some part of me psychically had this awareness that there was a change coming. And I remember telling Gail that I didn't know what was going to happen, but it was going to be, I'd have more clarity on where direction I was going in September. And I remember telling my therapist the same thing. I said, I'm looking at this stuff, and I think in September I'll have a really big awareness. And she reminded me, she said, you remember you told me in December that you would have more clarity in September, and then all this is going on. So I think what I would recommend to you is it's okay to grieve the loss, because it is a loss, and it could be temporary, it could be extended, but acknowledge it and then utilize your tribe. Utilize your employees, utilize the people around you to sort of come up with, hey, what could we do, or what are some things? So don't take it all on yourself.
I did. We set up a meeting for tomorrow. I'm Zooming with my directors to kind of get clarity and kind of see. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Great.
I missed your face.
Hey, we live so close.
I know. We'll have to make a coffee date when this all clears.
Yeah, but we can do one on Zoom. I get my tea, you get your coffee, and we can do it.
Or you just might all see me at the barista. I might be working there after this is all done.
Jamie, sorry, I don't know your background or if you're in all this coaching stuff too, but just like as a coach perspective, I'm wondering, and maybe you've already done this, if there'd be utility in brainstorming questions you guys can ask about this for tomorrow. Like brainstorming like interesting questions that you guys can try answering tomorrow. Like what is the most creative way to still serve people this summer? Or what's the most creative way we can still make money as a business? Or to brainstorm the questions to talk about.
That's great.
I don't know.
I know. I will definitely do that. That's a great idea. And they're young, so they probably have better ideas than I do. I'm old and stuck in my ways.
Yeah. Oh, so also, wow, that just triggered something else. Why don't you ask your customer what do they see? How do they see the summer? Because they're uncertain too. So why don't you ask them what do they see? Because you're probably going to get some beautiful responses, and I think. Yeah, so ask your customer. That's
a great idea. I didn't think about that, but that is good. It's really interesting though that it's funny that they're asking me as if I know. But I'm laughing because they're like, "So are you planning on having camp?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm planning on it. I've already spent a lot of money and prepared for this, but I don't know. I don't know. I go fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the likelihood is we are not going to be back in the swing of things. I just don't think even parents are going to want to put their kids at risk. And camp with masks would just be really weird. So, but that's a great idea. I think that is good to reach out to the parents and get some ideas and feedback from them as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Jamie, because, one of the things like our mind tries to do is always find the answers and find the solutions. And sometimes we just have to sit with the questions and keep asking the questions and keep asking them to anybody who will try to answer and see what comes and stay open. And we just don't know. There's so much we don't know right now. So we're really learning amazing life lessons in dealing with uncertainty. Right. We wouldn't necessarily choose to or want to, but we can make it mean that for ourselves, right? We can go, well, I don't have an answer, but what I do have is I'm building the muscle of managing uncertainty much better than I ever have before in my life, right?
Yeah.
And really tapping into where I feel like, I mean, just the fact that I'm sitting here with Jamie and Jerome and everybody who's on the call, my cousin, my friend Melissa, who's a doctor, and Shari, who is an amazing inspirational person who works for my husband's company and helps so many people with their health and their wellness, and who else is here? I see, and everybody, whoever else is out there, we would not be here having this conversation if it weren't for the situation that we're in, right? We wouldn't choose this situation, but look how we're getting together with new people. And Jerome, I haven't seen you in decades, right? How cool that we're reconnecting, and I'm learning from what you're asking and sharing, and we're all connecting in new ways. So I think that we have to look at that, and we have to not rely on each other, but really help each other and support each other, and be honest about the fact that we just don't know, and see what other people are thinking about the things that we don't know.
And Bridget, I'll tell you what makes this so special. And what makes it why I attended this again over Tony Robbins again, right? Is because there's a two-way communication. There's collaboration. And I think this is the way that we're moving. So I think even online businesses that are just one way, I'm getting less and less interest in it. And I love Tony, but I can go on YouTube and listen. I don't need to like have Tony live telling me stuff, because I want connection.
Right.
So with Tony, there's just one way. He's just it's great, and I love some stuff that he does, and I have some of his programs, but this is really more important to me right now, is the collaborative communication, the exchanging of ideas, and everyone's an expert. Everyone has something to give. So everyone has some value. And I think that we have to start really understanding our value, and the value is really going to be important as we move forward in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that so much. Thank you for saying that. Like, I totally agree. I love that.
Right.
Well, thank you for opening this forum up. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I really appreciated it. And I appreciate your input.
Thank you so much for being here. So great to see you, Jamie. And thank you all for being here. I think we'll wrap up, but you know where to find us. And please join in on pandemic positivity and share whatever you can to help. You know, it's totally fine to have, of course, negative feelings, to feel those and allow those. But I want that to be a really safe space where people can go when they really need a boost of only positivity. So I hope you'll all join in there into the conversation. Thank you for being here.
Stay safe, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.